Hineni, here I am. Hineni, here I am. Sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom, sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom, sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom. Sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom, 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 sim.
Boker Tov, everyone, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And Zisin Pesach, even though it's not Pesach till tonight, it feels like it because we're very limited in what we can eat. You maybe have just like another hour or two. We could potentially have some challah, very well protected before we go in tonight. So actually, it's an extension. So this is Shabbat Hagadol, the big Shabbat before Pesach starts. And it feels big. You know, it feels like not only are we here davening together, continuing virtually, of course. But it feels big in the sense that we are on the precipice, just like our ancestors on the precipice of leaving the Sea of Reeds. So too, we're kind of leaving our own Mitzrayim. We're on the edge of potentially a change. Please God, continued change. And what it's like to be in our society and our culture, to be literally more free. At the same time, we're struggling with what it was to be enslaved, in bondage, and what does it mean to take that step out? It might even be an opportunity to reflect on what it might felt like for our ancestors to take that step forward, the nervousness, the concern, the anxieties. What will it be like out there? Can we survive out there? It's real. It's real. So through our davening here on Shabbat, we're just going to take our time to prepare us. Our Shabbat prayer says, okay, we don't have to do anything different. We're not trying to achieve something now. We're not wandering yet, not eating matzah yet. We're going to take our time to create a space, maybe some spiritual strength in our core to then make that decision and to make that effort, that first steps towards the promised land starting tonight. So we begin on page 103 to rise together with Birchot HaShachar, the morning blessings.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan nosech bimina להבחין בינו ובין לילה.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני בצלמו.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני בת חורי.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני ישראל.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם פוקח עברים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מלביש ערומים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מתיר אסורים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם זוקף כפופים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם רוקע הארץ על המים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המכין מצעדי גבר.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשה לי כל צורכי.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם עוזי ישראל בגבורה.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מותיר ישראל בתפארה.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם הנותן לי עייף כוח.
אמן.
Page 122.
ברוך שאמר והיה עולם ברוך הוא.
ברוך עושה בראשית, ברוך מבשר בגזר גלויים בסחת יחיד
יחיד חלמים מלך משובח ומפואר את שמו הגדול. ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מהולל ותשבחו.
Amen. You may be seated.
So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. As Rabbi Eric said, we're in this sort of liminal moment because of the way the holiday fell this year, where it is not yet Yom Tov, but we're in Shabbat, and there's certain things that we can't do that we had to do before Shabbat. So we're a little bit in this in-between space. We're in the on-ramp to Pesach. And I wanted to offer this morning, as we prepare for tonight's Seder, sort of beautiful Hasidic interpretation of matzah that I learned in recent days. And hopefully this interpretation might imbue our davening this morning with a certain quality of presence. So the idea is that matzah, the word matzah, has 3 Hebrew letters, mem, tzadi, hey. And that each of these letters has sort of a spiritual hint for us in terms of how we might think about eating the matzah itself, but also sort of being in this time. And the mem is for mayim, for water. And one of the beautiful things that water does, of course, is that it takes the shape of its container. So there's a way in which this particular teacher says that when we behave like water, we kind of come flush with the truth of the confines of our experience. we have no choice but to be in that shape. That's what water does. But we can be whole with the truth of our experience in that particular container. The tzadi reminded this teacher of the tzaddik, the righteous one. And what is one of the things that stands out about a tzaddik is their faithfulness. When we eat the matzah, it's really an act of faith that we're going to make it through the wilderness. And finally, the hay. And the hay is breath, right? If you just say the letter hay, you necessarily, breath moves through the mouth. And of course, hay is also sort of a single letter that represents the divine, Yud He Vav He, which again is about breath and about being. So all these three qualities together, this ability to be flush with our own truth, this capacity to cultivate faithfulness, and this willingness to breathe and feel the divine presence as we move on our journey. All of this is sort of contained within the matzah. So we're not eating matzah yet. At least you shouldn't be. We're supposed to have our first taste tonight. I told the kids, no matzah while we're gone. But we begin that process of moving into that mindset, if we're not already there, this morning with our davening. So we're going to continue this morning on page 126. You know, this period of Psukei de Zimra is intended to orient us, not only to praise and to gratitude, but to specific themes. And it's not a coincidence that so many of the Psalms relate back or have associations to our wandering in the wilderness, because it is such a central narrative, not only in the story of our people, but in the story of our own lives. So we're going to join together the bottom of page 126, which really hones in. It's about God. This psalm is about God bringing us out of Egypt, and that God did that with love. So we kind of tap into that love in thinking about the journey of this past year and how we've survived. And for some of us, we've even thrived in moments, and we can be grateful for that. Va'ani b'chasecha v'tavdi yageh libi b'yeshuatecha. 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 Ashir l'Adonai, Ashir l'Adonai, Ashir l'Adonai, King of Malalai. Ashir l'Adonai, Ashir l'Adonai, Ashir l'Adonai, King of Malalai. Ashir l'Adonai, Ashir l'Adonai, Ashir l'Adonai, King of Malalai. Ashir l'Adonai, Ashir l'Adonai, Ashir l'Adonai, King of Malalai. We continue now with Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, page 136. So many beautiful lines in Ashrei, but I just call our attention to the idea that, again, God is carrying us through our wilderness with love. We say, Chanun v'rachum, Adonai, Erech apayim ugudol chased. That God is bringing us through the wildernesses of our lives with mercy, with compassion, with forgiveness. And so if God can do that for us, we must practice doing that with each other and for ourselves. Ashrei Yoshvei Avetecha Od Yalelucha Od Yalelucha Ashrei Yoshvei Avetecha Od Yalelucha Od Yalelucha Ashrem shegachalo Ashrem shanaynu Gadol Adonai Mela Meod Shvach Masechah Zechra Kavod Malchutcha Malchutcha Malchut Kol Nahnu Nevareyam Me'ata ve'ad olam Hallelujah So as we continue to prepare to cross through the Sea of Reeds, Kriyat Yam Suf tonight, God willing, I wanted to conclude our Psukei de Zimra with Ozi v'Zimratia, which is part of the Song of the Sea. And Rabbi Shefa Gold has a beautiful understanding of this psalm, this particular line, in fact. She says, Ozi, my strength, each one of our strength, v'Zimratia, and God's song together in balance, Vayehi li Lishua, that will be our salvation. That will be the pathway to our redemption. And I love how her interpretation invites us to bring into balance and to hold within a frame of our consciousness both our own role and God's grace, in a God willing helping us move towards, in a balanced way, some greater future, not only for us, but for the whole world. And I think this story of our Yitziat Mitzrayim, we tend to focus on God taking us out with a great hand, with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm. And that's true. Without God's grace, we would still be slaves in Egypt. And it took the courage of Moses and Aaron and Miriam and all of the unnamed people to say, we're going to get up and go, someplace we don't even know yet. And so I just want to bring both of those kind of energies, God willing, into our prayer as we move into the holiday tonight. Ozi ve'Zimratia vayehi li Lishua Ozi ve'Zimratia Yeshua, Ozi. breath, neshima muka. Bringing in that spirit of matzah. As we prepare for Nishmat Kol Chai, page 145. Nishmat Kol Chai, Tivarech et Shema, Adonai Eloheinu.
Elufim akayam
Iluvino
Aleshira kayam Iluvino Aleshira kayam Iluvino Aleshira Gaya, Iluvino, Male, Shira, Gaya. Allah, Bottom 146.
Miyin melach
ומשמלה ומיערוך
al
לה
hagadol hagibor v'nora
עליון
u'neshamayim v'aretz nalelecha nishabechecha nfa'elecha nvarech et shem
קודשך
קודשך גמור
גמור
לדוד ברכי נפשי עיני וחוק רבי
את שם קודשו
האל מתעצמות עוזך הגדול בכבוד שמך
הגיבור לנצח
והנורא בנורותיך
המלך היושב
על כיסא רם ונישא שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו
וכתוב על צדיקים באדוני שומעים נאווה תהילה
ישרים תתהלל
ובדברי צדיקות תתברך
בלשון חסידים תתרומם
ובקרב קדושים
תתקדש ובקלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל להודות, להלל, לשבח, לרומם, להודות, לברך, להקלס על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך
148.
משיחך, ישתבח שמך, לעד מלכנו.
המלך הגדול הקדוש בשמיים
ברכות והודות מטבע עד עולם ברוך אתה אדוני
בשמו
המלך גדול ותשבחות אל הודות אדון הנפלאות הבוחר בשירי זמרה
מלך העולמים
העולמים
אמן
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה
אמן
תברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכון ומכון ובחית כל בית ישראל פגלה בזמן קריב ימרו
אמן ישמע במבורך לעולם ומעמיה
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל שמי קודשה
בריחו
מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמה וימרו.
אמן.
אמן.
149.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
May be seated. 150.
ברוך
אבינו מלך העולם, יוצר אור ובורא חושך,
עושה שלום,
ובורא את הכל הכול.
הכל
ידוע הכל ידוע הכל ירו אין קדוש אדוני
הכל רמו חסר
סלם יוצר הכל האל פותח בכל יום דלתות שערי מזרח ובוגע חלוני רקיע מוציאה במקומה ולבנה במקום שבטה ומאיר לעולם כולו ולהיות בשם ברא עילת הרחמים
המאיר
אלוהים עליה ורחמים וטובו מחדש בכל יום הביט
מעשה בראשית
המלך מרומם ודומי עזם שובה ורבים נשאים עולם אלוהי עולם ורחמים רחם עלינו אדונו עוזנו צור משכבנו כן אישנו משגב בדנו אין גאה ואין זולתך לחיי העולם הבא. המעשים ברוך ומבורך אביך נשמה היי 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 לא רצועה מה לעולם דרות בונה זוהרים אותו מקייך את הקודם טובים ראשו אלוהים וסמנה נזה בכל העולם נותנים לו כל צבא מרום תפארת גדולה רבים ויוחננים והיועתה עוד 152 ללשע שווה מכל המעשים עוד נגלים ושבתים וראשים לשמונה שמך רוננו ינוי קדש לזכרך מלכנו Top 153.
Ulam
Ha'orim, Be'orim,
Ulam
Giborim,
Lechu
La'osim E'ema U'Ve'yirah, Gonam Mohim E'biem,
Mikdusha
Torah,
v'Torah v'Shira
Zimera,
U'mevarim
Shavehir,
U'mefarim
מריצים, מקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול, בו ונורא על השוע. כולם מקבלים עליהם אור מלכות שמיים זה מזה,
נענים רשות
זה לזה יוזרה,
בנחת
רוח
רוח בשפה ורורה
בנימה קדוש העולם כאחד עונים.
אומרים ביראה
קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך על הארץ כבודו והאופנים והיוד הקודם והאש גדול
מנסים לעומת
שרפים
שרפים
לעומת
לעומת
המשברים אומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו הלל ברוך לימוד החפץ כהן שכל ראשון במלחמות.
אור חדש הציון צעיר ונזכה
כולנו
מהרה
לאורו
ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות.
God's love for us through the mitzvot. We show our demonstration of connection to the mitzvot and to God. It's God's oneness. So I bring our seat together. Page 154. אהבת אדוני אלוהינו, חמדה גדולה ותרחמת עלינו, אבינו ואלמקנו.
וקרבתנו לשמך קדושה באמת, להודות לך ויחדך ביאהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו,
הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם בניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ובשופך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפו בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. Page 156, והם שמוע תשמעו את שנוכי מצווך.
לדור ודור, הוא קיים ושמו קיים, וחיסון נכון ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיים.
עבדנו דודנו, זה ישראל עבדיך ישונים לך.
אמת שאתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו מלכנו מלך אבותינו ואמותינו גואלנו כל אבותינו ואמותינו יוצרנו צור ישועתנו פודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך
עזרת אבותינו ואמותינו
עודה ומעולם.
משפטך אשרי
תהילת לאל עליון ברוך ומברך
משה מרים בני ישראל
לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה
ואמרו לעם
מי כמוך בנים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נוראתי לו תוסף אלה שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים לשמך שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל קומה ובתנו בך יהודה וישראל צור ישראל קומה גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש 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 ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני
So, Chevra, it's time for Shacharit Shabbat Amidah. Pages 159 through 161, we daven together. Rest is personal prayer between you and the Holy One. Silent Amidah.
Adonai
Sifatai Divna Uriyain Tehilatecha Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Leah האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל עליון גומר חסדים טובים וקונה הכל סוחר חסדי אבות ואמהות ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו ויהבה מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני וחיי מתים וזרעיו להושיע משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם מחכה לחיים בחסד מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו משני עפר משמוך בגבורות ומדומה אליו מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני בשמו
לחיי המתים
אמן גדל אג'ירה כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום כתוב על יד נביאך ואחר זה אל זה ואמר אדוני
גדול אדיר וחזק השביעים בו מתנסים לעומת זרעים לעומת זר ברוך יאמרו ברוך יאמרו
ממקומך
מלכנו דוד ותמלוך עלינו כי נרגים אנחנו למתי תמלוך בציון קרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון
נצח עם קדושתך נקדיש ושפרך אלוהינו בנים לשלום ועד כי על מלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני
בשמו
האל הקדוש.
אמן.
Shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'yimeru
Kaddish Shalem 167.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה,
אמן.
ועלמא דברי חיותי וינמיך מלכותי, בחיי חון ומכון, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב ויאמרו
אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולם מהמיה יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ותהלל שמי קודשה
בריחו.
לעילם מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה תאמירן בעלמא ויאמרו
אמן.
תתקבץ לטון ובטון לכל ישראל, קדם עוון ובשמי ויאמרו
אמן.
יהי שלמה רבין שמיה, וחיים עלינו בכל ישראל ויאמרו
אמן.
עושה שלום במרומיו
ויעשה שלום.
עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ויאמרו
Amen.
Tov, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We are now in Shabbat HaGadol, which was one of the few times a year where a full drasha was typically given by the rabbis to prepare for Pesach. Instead, we're doing our typical tradition of study together but we're going to focus with a Pesach focus. I mean, there's a Parsha focus in a sense, but we're really going to focus less on the Parsha of the week and more on the spirit of entering Pesach together, on this Shabbat HaGadol, that idea. And we're going to get into an aspect of the story. You know, there's so many rich parts of each part of the story of our liberation, of Sefer Shmot, of like how it gets into it, and it's endless. And what we want to do today in a discussion, and we have, of course, the chat for those of you who are able to join us on Zoom. We're excited to have you participate and join and give your comments too. You can find a copy of the Devar Torah on next to the live stream YouTube. There should be a link for Devar Torah, and this is called The Bush Was Not Consumed. We're going to talk about the burning bush, or the burning bush who never fully burns. So we'll read through the text here. At least let's read through first the text of actually where Moshe interacts with the bush, maybe diagnose that a little bit, what makes it special, and then we'll look at a commentary and see what do we derive from this? Why is it, the question I kind of want to say in general is, why is this the way that God reveals God's self to Moshe? Remember, Moshe has fled Egypt. He's grown up in the Pharaoh's palace. He murders a taskmaster. He runs away. It's a Midian, meets Yitro and his family. He's kind of finding his way, and he's not sure, and he's thinking, he doesn't know where he is in his life. He's kind of like in a young midlife crisis, when he said. He's trying to decide what to do, and this is where God is going to call him to go back to, he's just a shepherd at this point, go back and to free our people. So it's interesting how it gets portrayed. It's going to be with a bush. It's going to be with a mountain. It's going to be alone. It's going to be a call with fire. Why is there fire? All these things we want to see are not just facts. They're metaphors or spiritual interest here. There's things to learn. So Rabbi Jay, will you please read just 3 psukim, or 2 psukim, about the burning bush?
Yes.
B'kasha.
Okay. Now Moshe, tending the flock of his father-in-law Yitro, the priest of Midian, drove the flock into the wilderness and came to Chorev, the mountain of God. An angel of God appeared to him in a blazing fire out of a bush. He gazed, and there was a bush all aflame, yet the bush was not consumed. And I'll just say, for many of you who are regular daveners here at Beth Meyer, you know this, but some of you may not, and it just happens to be the way that I'm standing. I was thinking about it, is the parochet, the curtain on our ark, is actually this picture of a flame, the burning bush. That's what it's supposed to depict, I think. It's what I've been taught, and it certainly appears that way. We've got kind of mountains here, and there's symbolism with the particular colors of yarn that were used in terms of what was described for the original temple. But I just want to invite us to hold what we derive from our learning this morning and consider maybe why this particular teaching is alluded to in the cover of our ark. So we see here, just in these opening verses, a number of very interesting things. So one of the things that I notice immediately is just this phrase, Achar Hamidbar. So it's translated here as into the wilderness, but quite literally, it's like way out in the wilderness. It is past. It's like you went to the wilderness and then you went even further.
Exactly.
It's really
Deep.
in Nowheresville. And it signals for us, first, the kind of context, the sort of atmosphere in which we often, I think, my experience of noticing God is sometimes we have to get way out of our comfort zone or way out into a place where we can be in solitude, just way out, perhaps holding our experience sort of in the field of God's majesty. There's so many ways to understand this, but there's something very important, I would say, about being way out in the
Achar
wilderness.
midbar. Could just said midbar. It's a beautiful idea. And I want to add even earlier than that. Moshe haya ro'eh et hatzon. And so Moshe was, tending the flock of his father-in-law. So basically, he's doing one activity when he therefore has the opportunity to have this, and not only but do it far away,
Yes.
which then opens up an opportunity to experience God. One of the ideas sometimes we might think is that you have to separate yourself from everything else, then I focus on God.
He's doing his work.
He's doing his work, and in the midst of his work, now his work is outdoors, he's expensive.
He's alone.
He's alone. There's a lot of things going on that would generate, his work was not, the typical sitting in front of a computer all day, okay, but work. Having said that though, it means that he was in the middle of one thing.
He was in the middle of his life.
Yes, he's in the middle of a lot of things. And he's doing work in a servant role. He's doing it, you might even think it's kind of like not super high level thinking work. He's taking care of his father-in-law's thing. He's kind of doing the job. It's not like he has to do high level management. He's middle management, okay? He's just doing his job. When something opens up in the middle of his job, if something comes open, his ability to be in that place of being in your job, in your work, feeling alone, being alone, someone also, though, allows him to be expansive enough to notice what's going on. So something unique about that, too.
Nice. And then it says that he goes towards Mount Chorev. And the word Chorev itself comes from the root charav or cherev, which means destruction. There's a sort of, if you go into the etymology of this word, there's a sense that this place is desolate. It's a place not of destruction, but of wildness, of something where it would be hard for something. It's dry, it's deserted. And there too, I think we might think that in such a place, it's devoid of God. But we're going to see very clearly that this is a place where you might have thought there was destruction, that things couldn't survive, that it was a harsh sort of environment, that there too he could have this intimate experience with God. And then finally, we get into, I think, what is going to be the focus of this commentary, which really teaches us something about God, but also really about Moshe and what it means to be in a space when you can hear God, notice God, sense God's presence in the midst of your life. All right, so I'm going to read this next commentary, which is by a modern rabbi, still living, thank God, Rabbi Lawrence Kushner. How long would you have to watch wood burn before you could know whether or not it was actually being consumed? Even dry kindling wood is not burned up for several minutes. This then would mean that Moshe would have to watch the amazing sight closely for several minutes before he could possibly know there was even a miracle to watch. The producers of television commercials, who have a lot invested in knowing the span of human visual attention, seem to agree that 1 minute is our outer limit. The burning bush was not a miracle. It was a test. God wanted to find out whether or not Moshe could pay attention to something for more than a few minutes. And when Moshe did, God spoke. The trick is to pay attention to what is going on around you for long enough to behold the miracle without falling asleep. There is another world right here within this one whenever we pay attention.
So good.
So beautiful.
Good. And I want to just add, before you get to his commentary, in that last verse, it's only one verse, the word sneh, which means bush, is repeated 3 times.
Yes.
Vayar malach Adonai elav b'libat esh b'toch hasneh. Vayar, v'hine hasneh bo'er ba'esh, v'hasneh enenu kal. So the idea that the word bush in one verse is used 3 times when it's not necessary. This is the very classic, rabbinic read of the Torah. If you could have said one time saying sneh, it could have said sneh and it. Why say sneh so many times? He's playing on that a little bit here with this emphasis on sneh, that the sneh is not obvious, the sneh is something strange. Look at that sneh. And even so, there's a reason why God comes out of a sneh, out of a bush.
Right.
Why not come out of a beautiful tree? Why not come out of a beautiful bird? Why not come from a voice from heaven? Why is it? And the sneh is it's like a basic little bush.
It's
low.
low.
It's low.
It's
could be thorn.
ordinary.
It's ordinary. It's thorny. And then it has fire in it. You might think, run away. There's a lot of things about this that are just supposed to catch the idea that God, exactly like a metaphor, God can be in small places. God is in the basic place. God is in the place that you might overlook mostly. It's not necessarily the most pretty place. God, it might be the place of thorns.
Yeah.
But that's where God's going to come before you. It's not going to be about how striking its beauty, quote unquote, is. It's about how awake you are. That's what the bottom line is altogether.
Yes, and Rabbi Kushner is really drawing out here this just natural, inattentional blindness that most of us have most of the time. And one of the distinguishing characteristics of Moshe, as he frames this as a test rather than as a miracle, is, does Moshe have the capacity to pay attention deeply for a long time? And, when I do a lot of teaching about mindfulness, both in the context of a congregation and in other places as well, and one of the things that I come back to over and over again is my teacher's teaching, Sylvia Borstein, who says that mindfulness is really could be boiled down to pay attention. In fact, one of her first books, I think, was Pay Attention for Goodness Sake. And what happens is that when we pay attention for a long time, we have a greater possibility for clear seeing. And when we can see things more clearly, we have the possibility of responding with greater wisdom, with greater skill. And so it sort of sets in motion the possibility for a whole different trajectory. And I think we see that Moshe needed those skills. He needed to be able to sustain his attention, to sort of keep his eyes on the prize for a very long time. And to be able to see when the Israelites were rebelling in the desert and they're saying, Moshe, it was so much better when we were slaves and they're fetching and whatever, take us back home. And he has to be able to see, this is what's happening in this moment, and this is really uncomfortable, but I'm going to stay the course, and I'm going to figure out a way to keep going and have you guys follow me. All of these things, you could say, are built on the skills that were encapsulated in this one moment.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'll make one last comment, then I'm going to invite others to say, what do they think of this sneh? I also think it's just a powerful metaphor of where God can be seen. We said it before, God can be seen in basic things that doesn't have to be the most glorious sky in the history of the world or the most beautiful, but that there are simple, basic moments within life, and especially within nature, that can be just stunning if we do take the time to pay attention to them, to really admire and to notice carefully very small details around these things, might be with the bush, and that idea that it takes time, that one should focus, and that even modest things can have a fire within them.
Yes.
That the Torah, that the mission that he's going to go on, everything is powerful, is that Moshe is going to have to tap into, which up to this point is not clear he has it, is that fire for justice, that fire for leadership. He's really confused. Who am I? I'm a Hebrew, I'm an Egyptian, I'm from a poor family, I'm from a privileged family. He runs away from all of it to say basically a plague on all your houses. I don't know what I want to be. I don't know what. But there's a fire that in a sense I think was, again, we could play with it. I just want to hear others think what that's, but the idea that there is a fire out there, Moshe. There's a fire that is emanating and illuminating and giving energy to the universe. And we want you to tap into that because you have something you can give. Don't just shy away from a world which is confusing, complicated, ugly, scary. Tap into it. There is something for you to contribute. And that fire is not just a destructive fire, it's a creative fire. Like it's also powerful. Because like the fire typically would destroy the sneh. No, there's a creative fire here that we want to see take it and channel it properly into something to make the world better. So it's in a sense saying like, it's an external vision of like, basically saying, Moshe, what's your fire? What's your engine? What gets you going? What do you want to do with your life? Because you have a fire you're wasting if you just sit here in Midian. You got to do something with it.
And how do you get to that place is Moshe
Discernment.
notices.
He's a fit.
And if I had to
He
even
does discernment.
summarize it,
Discernment.
this is like the Torah of noticing.
Exactly.
All right, let's
All
see
right.
what people have to say.
Anyone have any comments here on our Zoom? Would you like to participate in the chat? You can type in your thoughts. What do you think about the burning bush? What is its meaning that that's how God appeared in the burning bush? What's the message from Moshe? What about his whole idea of paying attention? Any thoughts you have about this idea? We'll give you a chance now in the chat.
In fact, one of both of our mentors, Rabbi Sheila Peltz-Weinberg, wrote a whole book. She teaches mindfulness and meditation, among many other things. But one of the books that she wrote is called Good Noticing. And in fact, whenever I would be on retreat with her, learning from her, and I would share something, she would say, good noticing. It's really an orientation to our lives to be aware, to pay attention to what's happening. And again, not only paying attention to like the big, big things that happen in life, but noticing even in the small moments.
All right, we got some from the Dr. Perlstadt. I'll read it here. The burning bush is an extraordinary sight, not an expected event. Anyone would pay attention. Okay. So I think what Harry's basically saying is like, look, anyone would pay attention to see a burning bush, especially if you're a shepherd, you don't want your animals near it, it could be dangerous. The question is who's going to look at it deep and long enough to appreciate what's going on over there
Yes.
beyond the norm, right? Some person might see a burning bush and just basically run the flock away and just run away. You know? Like avoid, which by the way is a very common spiritual practice. One of the ideas is that when you're in meditation or even in prayer and something gets uncomfortable, the natural inclination of the human body, Darwinistically, is to run away from it. Change your idea. I don't want to think about that. Oh, let's stop. Then you just bring yourself back. Can you come back to it? It's uncomfortable. How long can you sit with that discomfort? At what point can you sit with that discomfort and say, maybe I judged it too quickly? A lot of comparison mind, quick judgments without deeper discernment. That's important for meditation and prayer, but it's also important for life to see like what is truly a threat and what it may be appear a threat, but may not be fully so. Open this back up again. Into the thoughts here about the burning bush. Maybe we stumped you guys a little bit. You guys don't always have to do every Shabbat the same amount of contributions, but we invite any of our chatters. Is there anything else in here? Okay. Sounds like we have just one contribution. Okay.
So I want to suggest that, we may not all be prophets, we may not all be Moshe, but I think this text offers us also a reminder that perhaps with time, with quiet space, with open, expansive horizons, whether we find that in our physical space or just inside of ourselves in the midst of prayer or meditation or a walk outside, that we too can hear God's voice and we can see God's presence in the bushes, in the sky, in each other, that there's a way in which we also, with space and time, can not only hear God's voice, but then use that to help give us direction in our lives.
Yeah, BJ just adds here, says, yes, but the bush was not consumed. That's paying attention. So therefore, it is an extraordinary sight, so most people would notice that. But the fact that it wasn't consumed it adds to it as well. By the way, just as a closing comment, I'll say that the JTS, Jewish Theological Seminary, the seminary actually neither of us went to. Jenny went for a year. I've taken classes, but it's the seminary associated with the conservative movement. the theme of the
Their branding.
Yeah, their branding is Vesne Einenu Ukal, and the bush was not consumed. And I've never heard the full shiur. I'm sure there's a full shiur about why they come up with this idea, why there'll be the force of a seminary. There's so many things you could think about. The fire of Torah, but it's a fire that doesn't consume you. It's a fire that inspires you. Fire is a beautiful metaphor for Torah. The noticing aspect. We talk about the bush and kind of a spirituality in terms of prayer. But I think that also like the fire, one of the other metaphors that the fire is not consumed or did not consume the bush is that, JTS, like also HUC, where we attended, was bringing in a modern scientific analysis of Torah. And there were those in the Jewish community, even to this very day, who saw that modern scientific, sociological, historical analysis was going to burn the Torah, that the Torah would disappear, that it couldn't handle this level of, looking at the Torah as having authors or having thematic ways of looking at it scientifically that would not maybe somehow contradict science, being that if you brought that forth, it would burn it up and go away. It says, and the answer is, this is my take, is that in the Bible was not, it's like, no, that's not going to consume the Torah. It's going to bring out deeper riches of the Torah. It's not, don't be so afraid. The Torah can go out into the world. God can be into the world and will not be consumed. God is stronger than that. There's more depth in it than that as well.
So as we head into our Seder tonight and tomorrow night, I think this text is also a reminder to us to be good noticers, to really pay attention, to be curious, of course, to ask questions. It's not only a reflection of what it means to be free, to be able to ask a question, but it's a certain learner's stance, what we call in Musar hitlamdut, an approach to these texts, to these questions, to these foods, all these things which us as adults have now done probably for many, many years. If you've just joined the Jewish people, maybe it still feels newer. But especially for those who have been doing this for a long time, the Seder challenges us every year to walk through this story and to walk through these rituals with a beginner's mind.
Yes.
With this quality of a willingness to, like Moshe, stop, linger, notice, pay attention, listen, ask questions, wonder. And so that is a spiritual stance that I think Passover invites, and especially as we move through the Seder tonight.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons why it's wonderful to invite non-Jewish guests to your Seder, because sometimes they will help enliven and keep you see what we see as regular. Oh, it's the Seder again. No, it's not. New person, new personality, new ideas, as well as things like mitzvah matzahs. Some people are going to be having a different type of matzah this year for the first time, and you realize the different types of tastes. These are all opportunities that change both the tradition, but plus the change. Let me just say, there's one last comment here from Leah Pollack. I want to make sure we give it to her. If I can get this right, Gavalt. She added in here. Also, there is someone out there who started the fire. Questions in, did I not see or hear someone grab kindling and start a fire? Are those others friendly? Putting Moshe in uncertainty. So Moshe maybe started asking questions when he sees something out of the ordinary too, about who might be around, what's going on. Yefeh. All right. Kol hakavod, shkoyach. That concludes our Bissell Torah learning. Hopefully something you can bring to the Seder. If you want, you can take this in, as you already began to say, it'd be a great conversation topic when you go through the Magi. We now are going to offer a prayer for healing. So we're going to invite all to please rise. We open up the Aron Kodesh. And we offer this prayer specifically. There are those in our community, sadly, who are struggling, both with physical ailments, both on the soul level, internally. But the truth is, all of us are. Our whole community, still the isolation, the struggle, not being fully together for Pesach, it's tough for the Seders. Although some are having some hybrid, and maybe some, it's a real blessing. But still in our own country, in the world, there are those being diagnosed still with COVID. And the isolation, it's been more than a year, it's challenging. So we offer this prayer for healing and for strength for all of our community, really for all the world, because there's no one out here who's not suffering from this pandemic. Even though we do see, like Elijah coming through the door, we see some light at the end of the tunnel, and we are grateful for that. Still, we are in the midst of it. So with that, we offer special prayer for healing. So, Chevra, remain standing now for the Musaf, Chatzi Kaddish, page 184.
יתקדש ויתקדש מרבה,
אמן.
ותברך ותהיה מימליך מלכותך,
בהיכון וביומך,
ובחיתך בית ישראל, בגלה, ובזמן קריב
וימרו עמי אש מרבה ומורה, לעולם עולם ועלמיה יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח, ויתבר ויתרומם, ויתנשא ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלל שמי קודשם, ולהאמין כל ברכתה ושירתה,
שוש וחטא ונעמתה,
דמירן בעלמא, והימרו.
Amen. So feet together, Chevra, pages 185 to 187 together. Rest is done silent.
אדוני שפתי תפתחו ויגיד תהילתך, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל אלוהי לאה, האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא, אל העליון קובע חסדים טובים וגונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו ויאהבה, מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיים מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, להקל חיים בחסד, וחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, נשעני עבר, ויעמוך בגבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצביע ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני
בשמו
מחיי המתים.
אמן.
נריצך ונקדישך כסוציח שרפי קודש, המקדישים שמך בקודש, ככתוב על יד ימיך,
וגר עוזר ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש,
אדוני צבאות מלך על הארץ, כבודו מלא עולם, משרתיו שואלים זה לזה, האם מקום כבודו לעומתם, ברוך יאמרו,
ברוך אדוני ממקומו.
ממקומו הוא יבן ברחמים, ויחונם ומייחדים שמו, ערב הבוקר בכל ים תמיד, פעמיים באהבה,
שמע אומרים, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שני לעיני כל חי. יהיו לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור.
ימלוך רע לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה.
לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך לעולם פילונו שני עולם ועד, כי על מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Amen.
עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, ועל כולם.
Page 203.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה,
אמן.
ועלמא דברך ורדיו ימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובמכון, ובחיי תכון בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב והימרו.
אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולם והוויה יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קודשה
בריחו.
לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן ולמה והימרו.
אמן.
תתקבץ לטון ובטון דחו ישראל, קדם אבו הודי בשמי והימרו.
אמן.
יהי שלום ארון שמיה, וחיים עלינו ולכל ישראל והימרו.
אמן.
עושה שלום ממרומה,
הוא יעשה שלום.
עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, והימרו.
אמן.
אין כאלוהינו,
אין כאדוננו,
אין כמלכנו,
אין כמושיענו,
מכאלוהינו,
מכאדוננו,
מכמלכנו,
מכמושיענו.
נודה לאלוהינו,
נודה לאדוננו,
נודה למלכנו,
נודה למושיענו.
ברוך אלוהינו,
ברוך אדוננו,
ברוך מלכנו,
ברוך מושיענו.
אתה הוא אלוהינו,
אתה הוא אדוננו,
אתה הוא מלכנו,
אתה הוא מושיענו, אתה הוא שכתירו.
אבותינו,
Please rise.
לפניך
קטורת הסמי, עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל.
לתת
גדולה
גדולה
ליוצר
ליוצר
בראשית,
בראשית, שלא עשה נגרי
ארצו,
ארצות, ולא
זמנו
עשה
ישפחות
משפחות
האדמה.
האדמה, שלא עשה
סמכנו
חלקנו
כהן,
כהן,
עלינו
עלינו
ככל המונה, ואנחנו קוראים, משתחווים ומודים למלך המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שביגו בשמיים. כן, נקבל לך אלוהינו.
ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם
ועד
והיה
אדוני למלך
על
כל הארץ, היום ההוא, ביום ההוא,
יהיה אדוני
אחד הוא
ושמו,
שמו,
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 ושמו
seated on page 207, invite those in mourning or observing a yahrzeit this Shabbat Hagadol to rise for Kaddish Yatom. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה
Amen.
בעלמה דברה קיבותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ויומכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עולמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה
ברכו.
לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן עושה שלום ימרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ויאמרו
Amen.
Amen. Maybe see everyone Chag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom. Couple announcements. All right, Pesach, obviously tonight. First Seder, people are doing them on their own or hybrids with people in their circle. Tomorrow morning, instead of morning minyan taking place at 9 a.m., it's the Chag day, we'll do a 10 a.m. short service and learning with a mourner's Kaddish recited by me and Rabbi Jenny. So that's tomorrow morning, Sunday. And on Monday, once again, at 10 a.m., there'll be a very short, brief service, some study, mourner's Kaddish.
All on Zoom.
All on Zoom. So days 1 and 2 on Zoom. Then on day 7, of course, is Shabbat Chol HaMoed Pesach. So look forward to that. As usual, Friday night and Shabbat morning. And then on Sunday, in the morning at 10 a.m., there'll be, again, a Zoom experience that'll include the Yisker service, which is very meaningful for many of us, of course, who've lost loved ones. That'll, again, 10 a.m. on Zoom. So basically, aside from Shabbat services, look for Zoom options for the rest of our Pesach week. Our second night community Seder takes place on Sunday night at 7 p.m., led by yours truly, again on Zoom. We then, of course, begin starting to count the Omer, which is the 49 days between Pesach and Shavuot, getting the Torah. There are many ways to practice this beautifully in an evolution of time of spiritual practices. Rabbi Jay leads Making Every Day Count. The Omer counting spiritual practice starts on Monday, March 29th at 7:30 p.m.
So note that the counting actually begins Sunday night at
right.
your second Seder, and we'll lead that as part of our
Seder.
communal Seder
Right.
experience. But in terms of our group, we're going to start on Monday just because there's too much going on Sunday night. And then every week subsequent through Shavuot, we'll meet on Sunday nights. And it'll be very short. We'll count the Omer together, offer a spiritual teaching to kind of think about the whole week ahead in terms of what soul trait we're working on cultivating, and then everybody will go on their way.
Awesome. I'm offering another class. We had a wonderful Hartman class, the Hartman Institute class in the fall, dealing with Israeli-Palestinian conflict and Jewish values. It was so successful. So I'd offer another class, a shorter series. It's just going to be 5 classes focusing on Jewish peoplehood. What is the future of Jewish peoplehood? Many of you who are familiar in our davening and our shul know that on the one hand, we have the sense that we are Am Yisrael, that when we stood at Mount Sinai, we received the Torah together. We were Vayichan. We were parked together as one people. But I feel like ever since that happened, we have been a divided people. You know, we share certain things like the Torah, our story, some basic sense of traditions, but there's so much division amongst us. And there are many questions. Are we truly one people? How do we have a sense of peoplehood between diaspora Jews and Israeli Jews, between Jews of different denominations, different political leanings? Can we be one people? What is the future of Jewish peoplehood? We will get into deep with faculty scholars from the Hartman Institute as part of the iEngage program. It's only 5 Thursdays. We kind of narrowing it down. It's actually longer options, but I cut it down, hopefully get more people able to participate. Starting 7:30 p.m., April 1st, you can register online. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but there is a drive-by pizza pie, your first taste of chametz, after Passover is over on Sunday night, April 4th at 8:30 p.m. Registration required. We'll be here at the shul, right? People will drive by.
Yeah, it'll be outdoors, and you could stay in your car, or if you'd like, come
hand
out.
Delivery from the rabbis.
If you'd like, you can come out on the field
And kind of chill.
and just be outdoors, and we're going to eat pizza and just enjoy our
And the
chametz
chametz will be
together.
sold back, and all that stuff will happen. Also, looking ahead just for soon, because during this period of time, we have both Yom Ha'atzmaut, Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron. So for Yom HaShoah, we'll be actually screening a movie here at the shul. Fanny's Journey here is quite powerful.
It'll be on Zoom.
On Zoom. So it's Monday, April 5th at 7 p.m. Yeah. Okay. Remember, our minions everything's a little different this week, but there will be Wednesday minion as usual this week, as well as Friday night at 8. Yefeh, our closing, Rabbi Jay.
Yes. So I thought that we would close with Adon Olam, page 211. And there's just this beautiful, the very last verse is, again, a reminder for us, Velo Ira, that we're still heading through a wilderness, all of us in our own personal lives and in the midst of this moment in the world. And part of this particular song that we end our tefillah with, but also part of our Pesach practice, is that we continue to have faith and hold steady, and sort of with a controlled sense of fear, but not allowing that fear to overwhelm us, and to have faith that we will eventually make it wherever we're going. Adon Olam Asher Mala B'terem Go Yitzir Nira Nasa V'chefso Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Be'ado Avkiruchi V'tisham Ve'ayira Ve'yirochi Geviyadi Adonai li v'lo ira. Hakim berach Adonai et yom HaShabbat vayikachehu savri.
L'chaim.
Baruch et Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam barei peri agafen.
Amen. L'chaim. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and Zisen Pesach. We'll see you
Good
on Zoom.
Shabbos.
Shabbos.